Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Anxiety Chicks podcast. As you can see, it is just me, Taylor, here today. Allison is not with us this week. If you are wondering why, basically, I needed to take off early in the week, and we usually record on Wednesdays. And unfortunately, as I posted on my Instagram stories, my mom took a fall in pickleball. And that's kind of going to jump into what we're going to be talking about today. But just to update you guys on my mom, she ruptured her Achilles playing pickleball. So that has been a week, a journey, something not fun to see my mom go through. And it's just been a lot of adjusting, and her recovery is going to be a lot. So she had surgery this week, and right now she's in a splint, and she'll be in a splint for 2 weeks, a cast for 2 weeks, a walking boot for 6 weeks, and she can't be weight bearing on that walking boot. And then after that, she's able to start doing more weight bearing, like walking and starting recovery exercises and stuff. So, an Achilles rupture surgery is no joke. And also, that leads into if you've been following me a while, you know that I actually have Achilles tendonitis. I've struggled with it for, gosh, over a year at this point. I have a lump on the back of my left Achilles. So this has been like a little triggering, and I'm trying to just be strong for my mom and obviously not talk about myself or my own fears. But like, even just at the surgery unit, hearing them say, like, oh, yeah, we do these a lot. Like, we see this a lot, um, especially in like pickleball, they see a lot of injuries. So, yeah, that's been something a little triggering, but I'm not going to stress myself out about it because we cannot worry about the things we cannot control. However, I have taken this as a sign to really focus on recovery and rehabilitation. And I've done a lot of that, but now I'm like really, really getting serious about it. So it's so important to take care of yourself and take care of any injuries you have so they don't get worse. And just especially if you're very active, like your body is so important and you don't realize how stressful things can be when you until you are injured. And that's kind of what I'm going to get into about the topic today. Today I want to talk about kind of situations that come out of nowhere and how to not be stressed and anxious about it, or at least how to minimize the anxiety and stress out of things that come out of nowhere and out of our control, and how to also just not worry about those things. Because listen, I could spend literally my whole life just wrapped in bubble wrap if I wanted to just not get hurt and not be a part of any situation that's going to harm me. And when my anxiety was really bad at one point, I this was when a lot of the not a lot, but those two movie theater shootings happened, and like I just was really struggling with like being in public or going to places, especially the movie theaters. I mean, I still struggle with that because that really freaked me out and traumatized me. And so yeah, you could start living in fear of like, okay, now I'm not going to play pickleball because my mom fell and or ruptured her Achilles and now has that. And it's like, okay, you could start crossing everything off of your life and being like, I'm going to sit in this chair and wrap myself in bubble wrap to prevent anything happening in my life. But that's also not healthy and gets you nowhere. So that's just another whole thing. But yeah, basically, I want to talk about re- just things that come out of nowhere that are stressful, like basically what my mom is going through. And just seeing her and her mental health going through this process has not only given me a weird sense of strength that, like, you don't know what you can handle until you're going through it. And I think that's something we have to remind ourselves as people who aren't going through something very traumatic and big right now, is that we don't realize how capable we are if the situation was to occur. And so I'll break that down in a second of like just my views on it and how I've seen my mom going through it. But I'm actually going to try and get on Instagram Live right now so I can share some of this with listeners. So if you don't follow me or the Anxiety Chicks. We have a podcast, the Anxiety Chicks podcast, and I have my page at health_anxiety, and Allison has her page at the Anxiety Healer. So all great things, but let me set this up. Okay, let's see here. How do I do this? If you're listening on audio, you're probably like, what is she doing? But you can also go watch the video version on YouTube, or you could go watch this episode on my Instagram. So I'm going live. So let me get that set up. A few little podcast updates are we will be doing monthly giveaways. These are a few things I forgot we need to update on. We will be doing giveaways on the Anxiety Chicks podcast. So be looking out for those monthly. I know one's about to go up for November. We go live every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Allison and I go live. And yeah, so now that I'm live on Instagram, let's get back into the topic of just learning how to not worry and obsess and stress over the thought of something traumatic about to happen to us, or how we would be capable or even able to handle something traumatic in our life. Because, like I said a couple minutes ago, you don't know how strong you are and the strength you have within you already until you go through something like that. So, I want to start with like my mom, and I want to start with like prior to her surgery and prior to her injury. And basically, my mom and a lot of people who struggle with health anxiety have, which I used to, but I really worked through it, have a significant fear of just doctors, illness, all the things, the fear of going to the doctor, the fear of all of that. And so when it came to the doctor, my mom was going to avoid it at all costs. Well, when she fell, I mean, you have no other option when something like that happens to you than to go to the doctor. And I remember going with my mom to the emergency room, and she was like actually shaking because doctors' offices and all that stuff make her super nervous, as it does for a lot of people with anxiety. And so while she was going through that, her body was shaking. She was so anxious. And mind you, this was the first day she got hurt. So we're at the emergency room, and she got through that, right? Of course she got through that because she went there, she got the scan. They couldn't tell her a lot, so it was just an x-ray. So we leave that with a boot, and she goes home. That night and the next night that night and the next day she was super, super anxious. And then 2 days later, her mood started to feel a little bit better. And so the fear and the anxiety that she was feeling on her way to the emergency room and at the emergency room is so real, right? It's so real. But in that moment, she didn't know how to work through it and prevent it like a lot of us do. Like when something traumatic happens to us or scary, it's like in that moment, what can we do to we got hurt, right? So like we are hurt. If you fall or break something, you're hurt. You can't control or prevent that. You can't fix it. You can't do all those things. But what can you do in that moment to nurture yourself and take care of yourself to get through that moment? So this goes for anybody who even fears going to the doctor for like a routine check or anything. The anticipation is almost the worst part. So like when you fall or get hurt, you're just kind of thrown into it. You have to go, right? And so she had to face it. She had to face that exposure therapy then and there. Whereas if you have a doctor's appointment, you kind of can put it off and all those things. But while you're facing it, the best thing you can do is really focus on your breath work. And so that's what I was doing a lot with my mom, is like right when we were at the ER, I was like, Mom, your breathing's really fast. So let's like slow down your breathing. So she would slow down her breathing. That's so important. Focus on what you can control right now. Like right now, worrying and touching our leg and like worrying about what's going on isn't going to prevent anything. So I was trying to just help her work through her breath work. And that is so important to helping that anxiety in the moment of facing something that you're super scared of and afraid of. So that was really the key part in the beginning of when you have something traumatic happening to you, when you're going through something traumatic, or traumatic can even be something that you're fearful of and you avoid and you're scared of, but you have to do it and you know you have to do it. And so working through those emotions. Okay, let me check the live. Okay. Sorry, I had to check that. But yeah, so that alone is something that is so important, is like when you are faced with something so scary, in that moment, telling yourself, I'm going to work through this with breath. I'm going to slow my breathing down. I'm going to take this second by second. Like, truly, in that moment when you're going through something traumatic, you cannot look at the bigger picture. You can't say, "Oh my god, my leg, I'm hurt and like or I have this illness or this and like what's going to happen to me tomorrow? Oh my god, what is going to happen in a bit like you could really loop and spiral yourself. But in that moment you have to say, "Okay, in this second, I am going to breathe. In this second, I am going to sit here and take care of myself. I'm going to have some water." Like that's what I was trying to get my mom's mindset to. And I think that that is such an important thing to do when you are feeling so anxious in a situation you have no control over. So after we got through that and like that alone, this is kind of like last October when I went through that really hard episode with COVID and I was so sick and I didn't know what was wrong with me. And then I had to get that procedure because I had some weird inflammation to it. And it was all so scary to me, but I got through it. And if you would have told me beforehand if I would have been able to do what I did, I would have said no. But you really don't know the strength you are capable of and that you have within you until you go through something. So, all in all, like when my mom got through that ER experience, I feel like that alone showed her, like just that alone, and not even, we're not even to the part where she had to get surgery, but just that alone showed her the strength and the capability she has to make it through hard things. So we get home and she has to go and get an MRI. So she gets an MRI and they say, "Ma'am, your Achilles is completely ruptured." So that's a lot. That's a lot to take in because the Achilles rupture repair surgery, it is a hard surgery and it is a process with recovery. And so she basically knew that when the doctor looked at her and said, "This is going to be what your recovery looks like." My mom is a very active person. She is very into health. She is a very anxious person when it comes to anything illness or health related. So in that moment, she felt like the world was crashing around her, which a lot of people would. I mean, not being able to just even take a simple step, that's a lot to have to mentally take in. And so I remember her just like crying so hard. And then we had scheduled the surgery for 2 days later. And I remember she was so anxious. But then the night before, she felt such a peace. And she woke up that next day. We went to get her surgery and she did it. And I remember walking in. Actually, no, I remember sitting in the waiting room and just thinking about my mom and like the level of strength I saw my mom have was inspiring to me and kind of why I wanted to come on here. I don't see my mom is the sweetest person. She has such a good heart, but I've always seen my mom with like the doctor or health or stuff kind of with a little bit of fear and like avoidance, always avoiding the doctor if she can, avoiding any health check, even like silly stuff like your heart like heart rate or something. So she's always kind of in my mind been someone who, I'm not saying she's weak, but like I don't see my mom as like this person who can like bear it all. And then seeing her go through this and like seeing how strong she was and she just said, "Okay, I'm going to do it," and just surrendered to the process of life. And like that's kind of what I felt in that moment is like, wow, that's so cool seeing my mom just like surrender to the process of life and surrender to knowing I'm going to be okay and I have to do this. And once again, that brings me back to, you don't know how strong you are until you go through something and make it to the other side. And you're like, wow, I did that. Like, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. If I got told I have to go get an Achilles surgery tomorrow, I would be wigging out. Like, that's really scary to me. So seeing my mom do that and then make it to the other side. And I remember walking into the recovery room and I'm like, looking at my mom and I'm like, she's so strong. That's so strong to put yourself out there. I mean, not like she had a choice, like she had to get it done, but to do it and not know what was going to happen. There, you have no control when it comes to surgery. You have no control when it comes to these things. You just get thrown into it and you have to do it. And I feel like a lot of times I avoid things or I'm scared of things because of those what ifs of like, oh, well, what if this happens to me? And then like, you want to control every outcome that could happen. So like, I could even sit back and say, what if I go play pickleball and I fall and I have to get surgery? So I should just avoid pickleball. And it's like, no, that's not living. But I relate this back to like so many things in my life, like with even pregnancy. It freaks me out because it's like, what is it? Like, that's such a weird concept to me that you're this person and then you're pregnant and you're carrying someone in you and all these changes are happening to you. And that's so much. And that when I think of the bigger picture, I don't feel strong enough. And I think a lot of people feel that way when they think of their fears. They don't feel strong enough for these fears. They don't feel strong enough for these things that they feel they can't face. But then you face them and you're like, wait, I made it through that. Because you don't realize the strength you have within you because it's blinded by this layer of fear. And I just resonated with that so much. And that's why I felt so led to come on and like talk on this. And I might be rambling a little bit about things, but I think there's just so much importance to telling yourself you are capable, even if something happens to you, you are so capable. I'm going to sneeze. Sorry. You are so capable, even if you have to go through that. Even if you do this, like you will make it through. You will be okay. Even if it takes a right turn, even if something happens along the way that makes it worse for you, you can make it through. And like, even just anybody listening to this right now, think of the worst day you've ever had, like the hardest day you've ever had. And like, you really just didn't think you could take one more thing. You made it through that. I don't know. I've really had a reflection on that. And I remember my mom just like wondering, like, why me? And like, in my head, I've just been thinking it might not have been for her. And I'm sorry my mom had to go through that, but it's changed my mindset on a lot of things. Like, seeing my mom be so strong made me feel a level of strength that I'm capable of doing hard things. And that even if I go through it, because I don't really see a lot of people, like, especially my family, like, well, my brother had like his gallbladder taken out last year, which that was also kind of an abrupt surgery. But I couldn't really be there for a lot of it. But like watching my mom like really go through this, and I relate with her level of anxiety around this stuff. So I like really resonate with her. It has just changed my perspective that we are so strong as humans, as just living beings. We are so strong and resilient and capable. And I just want anybody listening to this episode to walk away from this. And the thing that has been holding you back in life, the thing that you have looked at with so much fear. Oh, that's another thing. It just so happens that the injury my mom has and the surgery my mom has is like um the top injury and surgery for higher risk of blood clots. And like, that's my biggest fear. Like, the fact that my mom got that surgery and is recovering with that surgery with this big bullet point on her discharge notes that say, you are at a very elevated risk for blood clot. And like, she's okay. And she's doing the routine regimen that she's supposed to do to prevent it and make it through. And like, that alone, like, she has just shown me so much strength. And that I just, without surgery, without any risk factor, one of the bigger fears I have still, I would say I have two really big fears. It's fear of blood clot. Well, I guess a fear of being pregnant, and then a fear of traveling very far on a plane. Those are the three things I feel really still struggle with. But like I said, seeing my mom go through this, like, it has given me so much strength, because even if I go through one of those fears, my strength will kick in and I am strong enough, and I will show myself I am strong enough. But if I never face, like, even just something around my fears, I would never know that. I would never know how strong I am. I would just live in fear. So it all kind of wraps back to, like, this is exposure therapy, right? It's some form of exposure therapy. But I don't know. I just felt really led to come on and just talk about how living in fear of something happening, or living in fear of disease, illness, cancer, injury, any type of those things, it does nothing but take away the today that we are living in, and the today and the right now that we have, and it holds us back, and it pushes and pushes us back, and it steals our joy, and it steals the things we want in life and the things we would love to have in life, and it's just not a way to live. And if you relate to that, I relate to that. I've made it through a lot of fears and being held back in life, and, like, at one point just not even being able to get off the couch. I would say I've came a long way with that. um but there's still those few fears I need to work through. And I know a lot of people who are listening to this feel that way too. Maybe you need to go get a physical. Maybe you need to go face a blood result that you got that wasn't good, or a biopsy that you got that wasn't good, and you're very, very scared right now. You are so capable, and you don't realize the strength you have within you to get through it. And literally, when my mom and I talk every single day, and I've been going and hanging out with her and taking care of her, we just say one day at a time. And, like, each day my mom wakes up, she's like, I am capable of today. I can handle today. Just like anybody listening to this, you can handle today. Whatever today has to give you, you can handle it. You will get through it. And I just think that's so important to hold on to, is that you are so capable. You are so strong. You can do things you don't think you are strong enough of doing. You can do things you don't think you are equipped to do, because you never know until you go through it. That level of strength that lives within you, that anxiety tells you isn't real, and anxiety tells you you couldn't do it, you can't get through it. It's a lie, because anxiety lies. So the next time you feel like fear is holding you back from doing something, I want you to remember this episode. And I want you to remember my mom, and how, if I would have told her a month ago she was going to have to get surgery and go through this, she would have said, absolutely not. But she did it. And you can go through whatever you're scared of too, and you'll get through it. And I want you to just take that with you and know how strong you are, and how you can handle the hard things. And my mom is doing such a good job, and she's literally taking it day by day. And sometimes that looks like hour by hour or second by second. And the whole time, remembering your breath work and really working through it. Because look at my mom from that ER visit to now. Literally, her body was shaking. This was about 2 weeks ago. Shaking, told herself she's not able, says she couldn't do it, and she did it. And you can do it too. And we can't live in fear of what if or what is going to happen. We just need to live each day. So I hope you take that with you. And I hope that you know you are so capable of handling all the things you're scared of. So I'm taking that with me. I wanted to share that with you guys, and I hope you can take that with you. I hope you all have a great weekend or week whenever you're listening to this. Be sure to stay tuned for the next week podcast. Allison will be back, and we will be doing our monthly Q&A for November, and we have some amazing guests coming on in the next month and the months to follow. amazing things coming to the Anxiety Chicks podcast. And don't forget, we are on YouTube if you want to watch the video version of this. So have a great rest of your day.